Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about deleting other people's code. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, as a manager or tech lead slash software engineering manager, what would you do when a highly skilled software engineer in your team habitually, by habit, would delete other people's code or deletes code developed by other developers and then writes their own implementation, which is much more superior? Well, uh, this is sort of where, once again, this it all comes back to, do you know what the fuck they're doing, or are you just one of those fluff people who have a job that you're actually underqualified to have? Are you a people manager, or are you an actual engineer? Because if you're an actual engineer, this is a very easy problem to sort of figure out, I think. If you're a manager, you're basically going to have to sit them down as to not, like, I'm assuming that somebody has complained about this, and have a talk about feelings with everybody, and then try to just get everybody to play nicely with each other. Because there's two sides to this problem. One problem is that you might have an individual, let's talk about this highly skilled software developer. What if this person is rewriting code? One interpretation of what they're doing is that they are a control freak, or like a perfectionist or something like that, and they're shaming other people because they are superior, etc., etc., which sort of brings the question, what are they working on? If they have the time to rewrite somebody else's implementation, are they just sort of fucking around doing whatever they feel like? That's my first question. And then on the flip side of things, the person who's getting his or her code rewritten, why are they sensitive about the code? It's not their code. It's the company's code. And a refactor, as an example, is something that we benefit from. The improvements to code is objectively a good thing. And if you're sensitive about somebody changing your code, then we need to have a different sort of conversation. So this is a problem which only can be determined by you going in and looking at what the situation is, and if you can't evaluate that, you need to find someone who knows. Now I'm going to just talk from my perspective, because I'm not an engineering manager or like a higher manager. I've never been one. I'm just I've been tech lead and so forth, and just like a regular old working stiff software developer who codes day in and day out. So the way I would solve it is, as I was saying, I would take a look at the refactors and look for this exact thing. If I see that the highly skilled software engineer has a control issue, and I can see that in the way they comment in their pull requests, I can see how they interact, their general attitude within the team. There are these vibes where I get, and I've seen this within some software developers, they are this sort of person. That is, I will act in one way if I see that. And if I see that the other person, as I was saying, has an issue with people changing their code, then that is a different sort of control freak, different sort of issue, different strategy. Both of these situations end usually with some deviations. I'll talk to you about the situations where I've found where in like sort of the differences, right? But the common thing that I try to go for is that they both understand the way that we have to work as a team in order to produce good results. And that is one part, understanding that code changes. The code is not your code. It is meant to change. If somebody knows how to improve on your code and you do that in an inclusive, collaborative manner, this is just an objectively good thing. This is something that I do with my own coworkers, which is I've done a few times. In this scenario, I'm the tech lead, which makes this extra fun for me, because a lot of software developers, because I have I have a micro fraction of authority. It is so little authority that you cannot possibly imagine it, yet it is enough that they make a distinction between me and them. So when I write something, they're scared to change it. And it's not usually just me who's scared to change it. It's the classic one, like, why, like, I didn't write this code, can I change it? And I go, yes, you can change it. It's sort of like a mental blocker. A lot of software developer has this. You have no idea. I used to have it as well, where you sort of look at that code as immutable. If something is not nice, but you didn't write this thing, or it's a module that you don't really feel that comfortable with, you don't change it because hey, you like that's where shim programming becomes a thing. Don't even get me started on shim programming. It's horrible, and I always call that out when I see it. When I see people go like try to fit in things rather than fixing the underlying problem and like updating things as they are working on them, because that is how legacy code really gets started. And so the way that I solve this is, as I said, I talk to the developers and make them understand that if you're making a refactor or something like that of somebody else's code, there's no difference between you adding new code or updating something else. You create a pull request, provide some feedback, and if it truly is a more superior implementation, then the person who sees the change, or like the other people, should just agree, because we are developing as a team. It's a community type of endeavor, right? Now, on the other hand, if, as I was saying, I see that the senior or the experienced software developer is doing this out of control with control issues, I'm going to have a look at how do they manage their time, because there is no way that they are able to do this without ignoring what they are supposed to be doing, usually. If they have a story, if they are assigned a task or something like that, and they go and refactor something that is completely out there, like, because usually you as a software developer, you don't usually work so close to each other that it's like feasible to make, as I say, Boy Scouting excuses for some refactors, and rewriting somebody else's implementation into something superior, if you're doing that on time that you should be putting on this thing that you are doing, that is a conversation that I will have with the engineer. We will sit down and we will talk, and I will ask, like, why did you rewrite this thing? You were working on this thing. And then we have we have a conversation about that, and I make it clear to them that it's great that you're making improvements and so forth, but if you are assigned a task and this is sort of out there, it's not really, and I see this pattern that they keep on doing this, I will call them out on it. What's going on? This is not your code. There are no excuses. And you mean usually this is, if it does happen, and this is, I've seen similar sorts of attitudes problems in software developers. It can help to talk with them, but when it is this overt, it's usually an attitude problem, if it really is an attitude question and not just something that is very benign. And it usually ends up with me them getting fired, because you can't have a control freak like that in the code, like in a team, because they don't care about working as a team. They care about them and their way of doing things. And that is, this is sort of the person, they're one position of power away from becoming a dictator. And on the other hand, if you have someone who's very sensitive about having their code change, it's the same sort of conversation. And you explain to them that, well, your code is supposed to change. It's not like you wrote the Holy Scriptures or anything like that. This is something that is subject to change, and you sort of have to deal with the fact that people change your code and improve upon it. Try to look at it as a positive thing. You try to have that conversation. Or maybe you can learn something from the implementation, etc., etc. And that is an easier conversation to have, because it's sensitivity versus attitude and control freakishness. And most people sort of understand that perspective, because unfortunately software developers are humans as well, and so some of us get very, very emotional about things that really only is emotional until you get grown up enough to realize that there's a difference between you as a person and the software that you have written. And when you can detach yourself, everything gets so much more relaxed. So what I want you to take away from this is that when you're dealing with this sort of situation, it's usually a question of that either someone is a control freak or someone's overly sensitive, etc., etc. There's a conversation that needs to be held with the people involved, but you need to figure out what the situation is, because in some cases it's just a matter of having an honest conversation with people, because the situation is sort of benign. Maybe one person is trying to help out and making improvements and refactoring, and the other person is taking it in a bad way because they feel like, sort of how your mom might come home and you start cleaning in your apartment, and then your first reaction is not, oh, how nice, she's helping out. You go, what Why is she doing this? I can clean by myself. So people react differently. That can be the situation, and that's a conversation away from having a fix, which a manager can absolutely do. But in some cases, it might be an attitude problem, or it's something where it's a control freakishness type of thing, and that is a more difficult situation to determine, like to figure out what's going on there. You can fix this through conversation, but it's also very good if you can go in and like look at specific cases. You look at the comments and pull requests and like the general attitude from the people and try to see a pattern. And if it is what it might be, you might have to have an honest conversation with the people in question, or the individual people, and in some cases you might have to let some people go or move them if they're not willing to change their attitude. But always start with the assumption that it's a benign situation, try to fix it, and then you can pull out the stick if that is necessary. But don't start that way, because more often than not, people who find themselves in these sorts of situations, it's usually just a benign situation where people are taking things in the wrong way or might be overly sensitive and so forth. And it's usually easier to solve this with a conversation than having like a debate or like a confrontation about it, at least to start off with. Have a great day.